The Reds continue searching for an answer at starting pitcher. New signing on the way. Welcome in, everybody. Chatterbox Reds. I'm Craig Sandlin, joined by Nick Kirby. Nick, hope you're doing well. I know you've got a busy day, so let's knock this out. All right, news circulating on Wednesday early afternoon. The Reds will be signing veteran starting pitcher Chris Paddack, most recently with the Miami Marlins, was released last week. Look, at this point, you need a body. And Chase Petty went down with a blister, it sounds like, earlier this week. He would have been the logical answer for your fifth starting rotation spot. Jose Franco might have been an option, but instead they're going to sign Chris Paddack. Your initial thoughts?
Should we trade a starting pitcher for a bat? I mean, my God, all offseason, we got to trade a starting pitcher. This is why you don't do it, because you never can have too much starting pitching depth. I'll say it until people maybe listen to me. No, I'm in all seriousness. Yeah, like I don't blame the Reds for going this route. Like Jose Franco's been fine, but he's not stretched out. Realistically, are you expecting that Jose Franco right now is going to be a better option than Chris Paddack? I'm not going to bet on it. So I think it makes sense just to get another sort of warm body in there. And Paddack has been very bad with the Marlins. There is absolutely no sugarcoating that. But the Marlins did a couple months ago think he was worth $4 million. So there was some value there. Over the course of his career, especially last year, he was 89th percentile in walk rate. So he's going to throw strikes. And right now, that's probably as important as anything, because the chances of Chris Paddack having success are slim. The chances of Jose Franco having success are slim. The chances of a lot of other guys the Reds could have called up are slim. But at least the chances with Paddack of throwing strikes and maybe getting you into the fourth or fifth inning is, I think, a lot higher than those other guys, which is why I think the Reds made this move.
Paddack throws 6 pitches of four-seamer, changeup, sweeper, cutter, curve, and sinker. He's so far this year 0-5 in 6 starts with a 7.63 ERA. He's walked 10 batters in 30 2/3 innings and struck out 27. Opponents are hitting 308 against him so far this year. I think there's a couple of questions here that this brings up for me, Kirby, that I'm interested in your position on. Look, is Paddack great? No. Can the Reds get him for super cheap because he was already released by the Marlins, and the Marlins are responsible for the $4 million contract that he signed with them earlier this offseason? Yes. So you add a body. There's 2 parts to this conversation for me, Nick. One is, what does this say about the status of guys like Rhett Lauder, who are on the injured list, in their progress and prognosis? We already saw Brandon Williamson go on the 60-day IL. Is there an expectation in your eyes that Rhett Lauder follows suit on that? I mean, the clicking or whatever that he was feeling in his shoulder doesn't sound good, but then the MRI didn't reveal any structural damage.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think this means I don't think it means great things, but I don't think it necessarily means like Lauder they're really worried about his ability to come back this year, or that they're worried that Chase Petty's going to be, out for a long time or anything like that. I don't think it necessarily says that. I just think the Reds say, hey, there's a starting pitcher that's available that probably is better than most of our options, or at least is comparable. And it's another pitcher we can bring into the system, because not to knock on wood, I mean, there's a chance the Reds have another starting pitching injury, and they're still calling up Jose Franco next week to cover another spot. So that's, I think the Reds are I think a lot of times teams are just trying to cover innings. I think that is something that, as you get into the course of the season, teams are just trying to figure out ways to cover innings. And I think he was available, able to get him for cheap. Why not bring him into the mix? And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like the thing with Paddack is he has at least had some decent success this year. I mean, he threw 4 2/3 shutout innings against the New York Yankees this year. He threw 4 innings literally a couple weeks ago at Dodger Stadium, of only allowed 2 runs. So again, like there's the potential that you could catch lightning in a bottle, and he could, a guy that throws strikes could give you a couple good starts. And I just think that's probably what the Reds are looking at. And hopefully, really optimistic. I doubt this is part of it, but it would be nice maybe if there's something that Derek Johnson sees that, hey, maybe I can tweak and we can get something out of him. I think that's being incredibly optimistic looking at this. I think it's just more of a warm body type situation. But Derek Johnson has performed a few miracles, and maybe there's another one in the tank.
Yeah, I guess the other part of this, again, kind of plays into my initial question, but truth of the matter is that the Reds are going to have to make a spot on the roster for Chris Paddack, and he's going to have to go on the 40-man somewhere. And if Rhett Lauder is not headed for the 60-man IL, what is the solution there? It's one thing to bring in a veteran, whether that's for an MILB deal for depth, whether that's whatever. But if the expectation is for him to come in and potentially start as soon as Friday, where the Reds haven't announced a starting pitcher yet, then you got to make room for him. So I'll ask you to put your GM hat on now. Where does that come from?
Well, there's always a possibility that Pagan would go on the 60-day IL. That would clear a spot. I don't think anyone wants that to be the outcome, but that is a possibility. Kyle Nicholas would probably be a top choice to be DFA'd. He's been absolutely abysmal in the minor leagues. PJ Higgins, I know the Reds like him, but would you really lose it? Like, you're not planning on keeping PJ Higgins probably through the offseason on your 40-man roster. So would you consider that? And then that's probably about it that I'm looking at in terms of it probably would be one of those guys, unless, they decide to pull the trigger on a trade and trade someone like resigns that they're not going to give an opportunity here in Cincinnati anytime soon.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how they manage this. And if they realistically are going to immediately add him to the 40, or is there any possibility that this is simply a depth signing and he's signing an MILB deal and he won't even be added to the 40-man immediately? And maybe they do roll with Jose Franco, because if someone's not going on the 60-day IL and someone like Rhett Lauder is only going to miss a start or two while he works through this clicking, you just need a short-term option. Well, why DFA someone for maybe a 2-week solution when you could just roll with Jose Franco, who you said yourself is probably going to be about the same production as a Chris Paddack?
I doubt from Paddock's perspective he would take like a minor league deal or something like that. I think that he has enough of a track record that there's got to be one of 30 teams across baseball that could use him. So that's where I would have a hard time with that. We also haven't talked about Singer. I mean, I think they said Singer was okay, but I'm not 100%. There's a possibility that Singer's ankle that got drilled by 107 mile per hour ball hit back at him could be also an issue too. So
right.
Again, I just think it was a guy that they say, hey, this guy could pitch decent for us, and he's available. We need pitching. I think it was a no-brainer for the Reds, to be honest. I don't think they really thought about this a whole lot. not in a bad way. I think for them it was just, yeah, sure, come on, let's go.
Yeah. There was also another pitcher that was recently waived by the Blue Jays, if I'm remembering correctly, or DFA'd, but I don't know if he's actually Lauer, but I don't know that he's actually a free agent yet. So you would have had to make a trade in order to make that happen. I know he was a name that some people were throwing around. Yeah, I guess with that, I'm assuming you probably haven't done a whole lot of research on either one of these guys yet since the news broke about 5 minutes ago. But any thoughts on the decision to go with Paddack over potentially Eric Lauer?
Yeah, I think probably what you said is right. I mean, Eric Lauer certainly would be a better choice. I know he hasn't pitched well this year, but I mean, last year this guy in 104 innings had a 3.18 ERA and a 3.85 FIP. So certainly he would. I mean, to be honest, at this point, bring them both in. Like, I use one of them as a long man. I'm fine with that. So I don't even think it's necessarily a closed book that there's no chance that the Reds would still go after it. But I think what you laid out is probably the reason why Paddack was the easy, quick fix solution.
All right. Well, this is, of course, a developing story, and Chatterbox Reds will have you covered as more information becomes available. Make sure you tune in the 9th inning tonight. Chatterbox Reds will have all the details that come out between now and then on this developing story. Again, Reds signing veteran starting pitcher Chris Paddack. Details yet to be confirmed, but coming out surely over the next several hours. We'll get a lot more information and have a lot more insights into the decision, and we'll certainly break it all down for you tonight on Chatterbox Reds, live in the 9th inning of tonight's game, and then immediately after for a complete breakdown. We hope you'll join us then here on YouTube. Until next time, for Nick Kirby, I'm Craig Sandlin. This has been Chatterbox Reds. Thanks, everybody.